So there's some news about the current state of the Epic Game Store, which is the big PC gaming platform storefront slash launcher that intends to be a competitor to Steam, except that particular venture is not going as well as Epic and its CEO Tim Sweeney would like. So for those who don't know, Epic is currently embroiled in a court case against Google because of claims that Google is essentially engaging in antitrust practices. So right here is a description from The Verge. The future of Google's App Store is at stake in a lawsuit by Fortnite publisher Epic Games. Epic sued Google in 2020 after a fight over in-app purchase fees, claiming the Android operating system's Google Play Store constituted an unlawful monopoly. It wants Google to make using third-party app stores, side-loaded apps, and non-Google payment processors easier. Basically, Epic doesn't like that Fortnite has to go through the Google Play Store, has to go through that whole ecosystem, and that they have to give the fees that are demanded of that instead of them being able to essentially ship their own storefront and kind of have everything run in their own ecosystem. And they want Google to allow third-party storefronts to be allowed in the Android ecosystem and the operating system so that essentially Epic can have more control over both the financial aspect of them being able to get 100% of the cut, and also just in general not being beholden to Google Play Store's policies, kind of like how Windows, for example, you can essentially download a number of storefronts and a number of launchers, and they operate in their own terms instead of being one Microsoft store through which everything has to operate, is the argument that Epic is making. But Google says its demands would damage Android's ability to offer a secure user experience and compete with Apple's iOS. Speaking of Apple, Epic confronted Apple with the same issues, though Apple actually won that court case, which tells us that maybe their chances against Google aren't so great. But that's a whole other story. The reason I bring this up is because some information has been revealed about the current state of the Epic Game Store. This is a storefront that launched back in late 2018, and it was received with rather mixed results and mixed reception, in large part because of the way it was trying to compete against Steam. A lot of people, when they first heard about this, they welcomed the prospect of Steam having some competition because that would encourage Steam to not get complacent in their ways, and it encouraged them to essentially step up in terms of features and practices and whatnot. But then Epic Game Store actually came out and they started doing things like buying out exclusives, which, in the PC landscape, that is definitely very frowned upon. Steam doesn't tend to do that unless it's like first-party releases, stuff made by Valve. Then sure, whatever. But what Epic Game Store was doing is essentially using the massive war chest from the huge success of Fortnite to buy out exclusive rights so that third-party games would be relegated to the Epic Game Store, despite it being a storefront that was very much in its early stages, was lacking in features, and did not have the ecosystem that would make people transfer over from Steam to Epic Game Store. Some people just like to stick to one ecosystem that they really like, and Steam being kind of the standard and the de facto, and it being much more feature complete, games being relegated to Epic Game Store and people being forced to invest in an ecosystem that was still uncertain, and Epic Game Store competing in that way instead of just releasing a better launcher or just implementing certain innovations that would make people organically change from Steam to Epic Game Store. That sort of methodology of trying to brute force this thing by throwing money at it was not something that was viewed favorably, as all it did was essentially turn the PC ecosystem into kind of a console-esque kind of landscape where companies buy out exclusivity. And yes, the launchers are free. You can download both Epic and Steam, and you can use them both. But, people are just inconvenienced by that. They do like having everything in one place. And there's a security that comes with like investing in one ecosystem like Steam, where they know, what they can expect from that platform. And, with Steam Deck being a thing and that console favoring Steam because obviously it's made by Valve and it was designed around Steam. Having a game not come to Steam and not being able to be played on the Steam Deck in a kind of a seamless fashion because Epic Game Store paid enough money to secure exclusive rights to a certain game, like that was just not something that people were jiving with. Epic Game Store does have a better revenue split between the platform and the developers, which is great. But on the customer side of things, on the consumer side of things, they just did not make a particularly good impression. All of that contributes to a situation where Epic Games Store just hasn't been able to make the headway it would have liked. And this was something that was admitted in court during that court case against Google. So right here, Kotaku highlights one aspect of this court case that The Verge is covering here, but this is a full rundown of that court case. This specific Kotaku article kind of highlights specifically the profitability of the Epic Games Store, which even today is still not profitable. Again, this storefront launched in late 2018. It is now late 2023. This store has been out for 5 years now, trying to compete against Steam for 5 years, and it's still in the red. It's still spending more money than it's making, and it's proving to be something of a detriment for Epic as a company in terms of, its revenue potential and all these things. A lot of that money is spent on trying to offer free games to users, trying to buy out exclusives, and of course adding more features and keeping the store updated. But the amount of headway that Epic Games Store has made in the time that it's been out has been a little too slow, and just giving out games and exclusivity and all these things, it hasn't been enough to pull away people from Steam. And so amidst this court case against Google, Epic Games Store has had to admit as part of the proceedings that the storefront is not doing as well as they'd like. Epic Games Store boss Steve Allison admitted that the PC store isn't profitable and said that growth was still the company's main goal. This is information that would usually be kept confidential because obviously the optics surrounding that are negative and it generates negative PR, and it would result in headlines that don't shine Epic Games Store under a good light. But because these are legal proceedings that often lead to confidential information being revealed in order for, the judge and everyone to have the information necessary to make a deliberation, this is something that Epic Games Store had to disclose. And this is a situation that goes against Tim Sweeney's expectations of making a profit by 2023, which is now. I previously discussed how Epic took Apple to court for the same reasons that they're taking Google to court. Well, during those proceedings, Epic CEO Tim Sweeney tweeted that losing more than $300 million on the store was all part of the plan. It was a fantastic plan and helped grow the store and its business. It was all, part of a long-term investment to make this thing profitable. Also, during that same trial against Apple, Epic said its PC store would start turning a profit in 2023. That was Tim Sweeney's prediction. 2023 is almost over, and during recent court proceedings against Google, Epic has had to admit that that goal was not met. It is still not profitable. So it seemed as though Tim Sweeney's optimism back in 2021 when they were fighting Apple was overblown. It seemed as though that optimism has not panned out, and Tim Sweeney got a little overzealous with his ambitions. Or as Kotaku's article aptly puts it here, Epic has admitted that its grand plans to spend hundreds of millions of dollars on free games for its users to grow its store at an artificially fast pace didn't pan out, and Epic Games Store is still not profitable. Tim Sweeney's thought process was, if we keep throwing money at this thing and just buy a bunch of stuff, everything will resolve itself. But that's just not how, customer loyalty works, especially when Steam is so well established and is so feature complete, and it's just such an ideal environment for PC gamers. You have to just really outdo and outshine Steam. You have to just be better than Steam. That's how you get people to shift over to your platform. But pissing off customers by trying to brute force them, by trying to strong arm them into going to Epic Games Store by saying you are not allowed access to the games that we poured money into to make it exclusive to our platform, that's going to make people more resistant to checking out your game store out of spite, which I think is a lot of what we saw in the early days of Epic Games Store, a lot of spite because of the lack of features, just the baffling lack of features, and the audacity to try to get people to transfer from Steam to Epic Games Store, despite it just being a worse environment. Epic Games Store has made a lot of headway since, it finally added a freaking shopping cart and stuff like that. But, a lot of people would still argue that Steam is kind of way ahead of the curve right now. And no amount of strong arming with, free games and exclusives is going to change that. And one of the serious side effects of the Epic Games Store not making a profit this year like Tim Sweeney planned, like it was supposed to, is that it's resulted in jobs being cut, or at the very least, it was likely a contributing factor to the fact that on September 28th, 2023, it was reported that Epic Games Store cut 870 jobs, 16% of its workforce. The initial report was from investigative reporter Jason Schreier, who published his article on Bloomberg. Fortnite maker Epic Games is cutting about 16% of staff, and one of the reasons, according to CEO in a memo sent to staff, was that they were spending way more than they were earning. Now, their ventures extend far beyond just Epic Games Store. They have the Unreal Engine as well as Fortnite and all these things, but it would seem as though Epic Games Store is proving to be costly enough that it certainly hasn't helped in them trying to be profitable as a company, and it hasn't helped in Epic Games' ability to retain the jobs that they themselves, decided to hire for. I say ability, they can, they are a multi-million, multi-billion-dollar company. They would be able to if they really tried, but again, for corporations, it's all about corporate interests. It's all about trying to please investors, and it's about trying to create a certain kind of perception and optics surrounding the company, and cutting jobs tends to be something that investors tend to like in terms of long-term prospects when a company isn't performing as well as it'd like. So it's not about whether Epic can save these jobs. It's just more about the fact that things like the Epic Games Store not being as profitable as it could be or as the company would have liked, being made up for by cutting jobs and by cutting in areas that is really unfortunate, because it's the leadership that botched the Epic Games Store's profitability, and the people who are just doing the work that they were given, who were just doing what they were told by the captain, are the ones getting punished, when the captain was the one who kind of messed up and was overzealous about ambitions that didn't pan out. But you never know. Maybe they'll find a way to turn things around. But in the meantime, let me know in the comments below what your thoughts and opinions are on the Epic Games Store. Is it something that you personally frequent or use a lot? I've kind of forgotten about it. I don't really claim many of its free games unless it's something really compelling. I've literally not touched the Epic Games Store in months, maybe years, whereas Steam I continue to use. But what has your experience been like? Have you experienced improvements with Epic Games Store? Have the improvements been enough for you now? Kind of juggle between Steam and Epic Games Store, or are you still just kind of mainly using Steam and have kind of forgotten about Epic Games Store and don't spend really all that much money on the storefront? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.